Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be creating a two-tier application in virtual machines, and then I will convert that virtual machine application to containers, and then finally I will deploy the multi-container into Kubernetes cluster. For this demo, I will be using Tomcat as my front-end application, and for the backend I will be using MySQL. Let us look into it. I need to have operating system, and then I need to have the MySQL, Tomcat, Maven, JDK, all these softwares, and then I need to have a dependent files to integrate my Tomcat and MySQL, and finally the source code. So let me mark it. OS softwares, and then jar file, and finally source code. Okay, so if you wanted to deploy my source code on a production like servers where you will have so many application servers and database should be needed, so you need to deploy, you need to maintain all these standards for your application to run. Sometimes it will be overwhelming to maintain your code in the respective servers. So all these things can be minimized if you go through a containerized model. So when we go into the containerized model, what basically it will happen, your operating system and softwares will become a single base image. So let me put your base image to see. Your base image will include your OS and your softwares, etc. And the second layer will include your compiled version of your source code plus your dependent libraries. So let me mark it. OS softwares, and on the second layer war file plus dependent files. Okay, so it basically eliminates the multiple things like maintaining your operating system. All that can be avoided when you go through a containerized. So basically how this can happen is through by writing a Docker file. So developer will be developing this Docker file. Let me show you what is Docker file it is, so that it will be easy to understand. The Docker file will look like this. As mentioned earlier, right? You're from Tomcat 8-Alpine. This include your operating system, and also it include your JDK and Tomcat 8. So this one line has everything, your operating system plus software. The remaining all the lines from 4 to all the way till 10, it's all what your application is needed. Okay, so whatever I've added at the last 7 and 8, those are all like a dependent file for your application to run. So when you run your Docker file, the output will be the Docker image. So there are like multiple software available. For my demo, I'm using Docker. So when you run this, the output will be Docker up. You will be storing, when you run your Docker file, the image will be created. That image will be stored in the Docker up. Okay. So for our example, we'll be having two images, one for MySQL and another one for Tomcat. Okay, so until then your build process is completed. Now we need to deploy both the images in the Kubernetes cluster. So let me show you quickly how are we going to achieve that. So let me draw something like the Kubernetes cluster. Let us assume this blue color one is going to be your Kubernetes cluster. As you know that Kubernetes cluster is made of worker node and control plane. So when I deploy these two Docker images in my Kubernetes cluster, that will produce couple of parts, one for MySQL and another one for Tomcat. So let me note it down. Tomcat pod, and this is going to be your MySQL pod. Okay, I think so far it is clear. So let me draw a line so to denote that this pod gets downloaded from this to this Kubernetes cluster. Okay. Okay, for my application to run, my Tomcat and MySQL pod should communicate each other. There should be there should be some integrating file which has to be a reference between these two files. Okay, so that file here, as a DevOps engineer, you need to know what are all the property file that integrates your Tomcat and your MySQL. This is a file which basically have all your MySQL database name and the host name where it is residing and what driver we need to use. Everything will be stored in the Tomcat part. So this file is more important, where you need to give all the details that MySQL holds. Okay, so let me go back to my one. Okay, now in my Tomcat part, I will have all my MySQL credential details under my Tomcat part so that it will go and connect. So how these parts get created? There are like a few YAML files, so which we need to run in the Kubernetes cluster to get these parts get created. Okay, let me draw one more line. So if in my example, I'm going to use two worker node 1 and 2. So if it is just only if you are running this entire stuff in a single cluster, where you don't have multiple worker node, then you can avoid services, because services is only needed when two different parts are spread in two different worker node. Then it's very hard to communicate. In that case, you need a service. Service is like something like in between. Service will help you to talk between the pods residing on different worker node. Okay, so let me mark it like worker node 1, and this is worker node 2. Let's assume that your Tomcat 1 is going to be inside here. Tomcat pod here, and let's assume that your MySQL pod is going to be here. So that means both the pods are running on two different server. When both the servers are running on two different one, is very worker node 2 will not know what is the IP for Tomcat pod. In that instance, the services will help you out. So services, this let me add. That's why we need services. So since in my example, I'm going to have different worker node, there is a possibility that Tomcat pod and MySQL pod can be on different node. So basically the services will help you to resolve the IPs of each other and communicate. So in case if I wanted to access this application outside my Kubernetes cluster, right? In that case, If I wanted to access my application, I will be accessing through our services. That services will take care of communicating the pod within the Kubernetes cluster and then sends the result outside my Kubernetes cluster through node port. Okay, I think I pretty much covered how the what happens behind the scene when you access your application. Okay, let me see all this stuff by executing the command one after the other. So this is my GitHub account where I am having all my source code for my application to run in my virtual machine. So let me let me download the code. Okay, so wget, so git clone. Okay, just execute this command. So basically this command will download the source code here. So basically what I'm going to do now, I'm going to compile my source code and create a war file. This is going to be exactly what we put in our paint. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to run my application in my virtual machine, in my local computer. So go here, and I'm basically I need to do a maven command to compile the code, and then I'm going to run a Docker file. So let me go here. Okay, let me do a compile. Oh, before compile, I wanted to change few things. Let me do it. So as I mentioned before, there is a configuration file. So since I downloaded from my GitHub, there I have just everything. I make it like a parameterized. So I'm going to modify, going to give a direct value since it's my local. That is my username for my MySQL database, and this 1826 is my password, and this is going to be localhost. Okay, so I think that's it. Okay, so going back to the place where you ran your command, I have the root.var. Let me copy and I will rename to like test app. Okay, let me put it test app. Copy this. Go. So basically, you need to go and copy this file under the Tomcat folder. C drive. This is a placeholder where I have my Tomcat 8 installed and going to web app. Let me go and drop that file on test app. If the Tomcat is already running, then it will go and extract that folder. I think Tomcat is not running. Okay, I think it's already running. Okay, see, you see here the test app folder is got created. Let me go and access this application now. Localhost 7070 test app test.asp. You see here Tomcat and MySQL. So yeah, basically I just wanted the simple SQL command, so which I already got executed. I created this entry in the database. What I'm doing, I'm just printing those SQL values in my JSP file. Okay, so what I need to do now, I need to since now everything is running on my virtual machine, I need to convert this application into containerized. Okay, let me do that. So for you to do a container, you need to run a Docker file. So if you look at here, this is my Docker file. So basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this Docker file to create a container. Okay, let me go and do it. Let me check. So this is my Docker account and repository, and then MySQL DB. Since okay, if you do a Docker image, you can see a new image got created. Okay, now I need to push this Docker image to my Docker hub. Okay, let me do that. Docker push. Okay. Okay, so now we have compiled our code, and then we have created the Docker image, and we push the Docker image to the Docker hub. So now we have converted our existing web application that is running on that was running on my local. I converted into a Docker image now. So let me show you how to run that deploy that image into my Kubernetes cluster. So what we have done so far, so let me show you that so what we have done, we ran the Docker file and then the Docker file created the image and stored into the Docker hub. Now we need to run all the activities in the Kubernetes cluster. So let me show you. Before running the command, I wanted to show you what files that creates this pod. Quickly, I just go through it so that it will be easy for you to understand when you go through my code in GitHub. So go to the Kubernetes folder. Here I have all my YAML file. Let me refresh it, reload. Okay. So here in my app secret.yaml, I store all the property file for my MySQL. So this file will help you to create the runtime environment variable in Tomcat, and when the application calls the MySQL DB, at that time these values will be used during the runtime. Okay, so and then and the same thing for the secrets for the MySQL. Okay, and then these two YAML file, the secrets will help you to protect your password in base64 algorithm. And then after that you need to I need to, before going to the deployment YAML, I need to talk about the volumes. Okay, since we are using MySQL, which is your database, you need to maintain your storage in a persistent way. So basically what does it mean? Whenever if the pods get deleted, we still wanted to maintain the database stored in your Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so in this example, I'm using host path as my storage medium, and all your data, all your content will be stored here. And when you say persistent volume claim, in order to use this one, you need to have this persistent volume claim. Maybe I will put the detailed video on volumes, how it works and everything. I can go through that in detail. Okay, now going back to, so yeah, just understand that the volume is just to store your MySQL data. Like when you execute, you create a database and insert everything, all that will be stored under this path. Okay, and this is your deployment YAML for your SQL, MySQL. Here we are not doing much, just one thing you need to understand, where it has to store everything is defined in this YAML file. And then usually in the YAML file for the pod and everything, you will have your image where you wanted to download. Those things will be given here. Okay, now with that, I just explain about the secrets and the MySQL deployment YAML. Now let me show you what is there in the Tomcat pod.yaml. So here this is the one what I uploaded few minutes back in the command prompt. So you basically going to download from your Docker Hub, and then you are going to retrieve the values from where you define in your secrets. That is the references what you are given. Please go through my video where I detailedly explained about the Kubernetes secrets and how you can retrieve Kubernetes secrets in the YAML pods. All that I have given in detail in my other videos. Please take a look at it. Yeah, that is all about your YAML file. So for you to make your application to up and running, you need to follow some sequences, because you want to have your storage, your volumes to be created first, and then your secrets should be installed next, and then you can rest of the other stuff you can deploy it in any sequence. So all these sequence of steps what you wanted to run, I have my Jenkins job to do that. Instead of like running one by one, executing the Kubernetes command, I put everything together in my Jenkins job. Let me show you that. 7 else. So if you look at the Jenkins configuration, so basically what it does, I'm downloading it from the Git, and then I'm just saying that what are all the steps to follow. Whatever I did in my local, I'm doing the same stuff in my Jenkins. So where I'm running a Maven package, and then it will create a package, and I'm telling what is the folder. I'm just showing where my pom.xml is reside. That is the path I'm giving here. And similarly, this is a Docker one. So if you see in my other video, I explained about how to configure Docker and how to make Docker to run in Kubernetes, how to run in Jenkins. So please go through that video, that where I talked about the configuration and how to make your Docker to run in Jenkins. And same thing for Kubernetes also. Please go through that video. Okay, and pretty much, and then I'm having the sequence what I told you earlier, right? What sequence to be followed I gave here. You need to just execute these commands. So let me go and run it. To build now. When the build is happening, let me, before watching that in the Kubernetes cluster, I'll show you how that a log generates in the console output. So the first step is downloaded everything into the Jenkins workspace, and then it is doing the Maven compilation. Once the Maven compilation is complete, your war file will get generated, and then it's basically trying to download your base image. So now this is a step where your Docker build is running. So when you're so I think the base image got downloaded, created, and then it's just doing the customization step now. So image is got created. Now the image is pushing back to Docker Hub. So going back to Docker Hub, you can see that if you go back to the Docker Hub, you can see that the image got pushed a few seconds back. Probably you might see that. Let me see that. You see here, right? Last push a few seconds back. So going back to your Jenkins job, it is still running. Let me go and monitor. kubectl get pods -n. Okay, so both the parts are started and up and running. For example, if you do not have the GUI or you do not have the front end to have, if you do not have your browser, you can verify your deployment by going inside the Kubernetes container. So kubectl get execute -it. Okay, you are now inside the Kubernetes container. You can run this command curl localhost 8080. Okay, curl is not there, so apk curl add curl. Okay, so in case if you do not have the front end, this is somehow you can use it to validate your deployment. Now go and type curl localhost 8080. Yeah, it gives you that, and then test that. Okay, so it's just printing what this is the expected one. So this is something, if you wanted to validate within the Kubernetes cluster, you can do that. If you wanted to access outside, then you can very well use the browser. So if you go back to my MS Paint, I wanted to access outside my Kubernetes cluster. So let me show you something. kubectl get svc -in Jenkins. You see here the type is node port. That means this particular service can be accessible outside the Kubernetes cluster with the port 30,002. Okay, so going back to the browser, so you can use any of your Kubernetes host cluster host name. I have like a three host name, so I can check any one of the Kubernetes cluster host name and then type it test.jsp. Yeah, same thing, whatever you see there. Okay, so what I mean to say that kubectl get nodes. So basically I have like three nodes running in my Kubernetes cluster. I can use any one of it to test my to check this application. So it will give you the same answer, same output. Okay, so I hope you understand what we have done in this video. So basically, as a first step, I downloaded code from my GitHub and executed that in my local desktop, where I have my JDK, Maven, everything. We ran our application on top of the existing VM machine, and then we converted that existing VM machine by creating a, let me go, and then we converted the existing VM application into a Docker file. When you run a Docker file, you created a Docker image and stored in the Docker Hub registry. And finally, we downloaded that Docker images to our Kubernetes cluster by running the YAML file. So when you ran the YAML file, you created the two different parts, and then I just explained you how the two parts can be accessible through services that I've explained. And if you wanted to access your pods outside your cluster, then you need to expose your services as node port. Okay, I hope you understand. Please let me know if you like this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.